Right, another international news. Israel has launched an attack on the Hamas leadership in Qatar, expanding its military actions across the Middle East to include the Gulf Arab state, where the Palestinian group has long had its political base. Now, several blasts were heard in Qatar's capital, Doha, with the attack targeting ceasefire negotiators. Qatar, which has been mediating between Hamas and Israel, condemned the attack on Hamas officials and called it a violation of international law. Israel's Defense Department described the attack as a correct decision. No casualties have been reported. Right, so let's get some reaction and, of course, an analysis to some of those two international stories. We are joined by international relations expert Ayesha Kajee, joining us via video link. Ayesha, a good evening to you. Thank you so much for joining us. And here we are. Reports of Israel saying that the attack on Hamas leaders in Qatar was a correct decision, they say. And here we are now. The Qatar also, seeing buildings, seeing some damage there as well. I mean, initial reaction upon hearing the news from you.
Well, it was almost disbelief, to be honest, Naledi. It's a flagrant breach of international law and a violation of Qatar's territorial sovereignty, no matter what the aim was or wasn't. And Hamas has actually confirmed that there have been 5 casualties, as well as the Qatari Foreign Ministry saying a Qatari official, a security official, has also died. So there are 6 casualties. And the attack was directed at a residential neighborhood in Doha. So it's a flagrant breach of international law. It's also a violation, as I said, of territorial sovereignty. Many world leaders are coming out to condemn these attacks, including the leaders of Spain, Italy, France, the United Kingdom, and even President Trump saying he's very unhappy about it happening and assuring the Qataris that it will not be repeated. His spokesperson said so, but then also puzzlingly said that Mr. Trump feels that this might now actually enable peace in Gaza. I'm not quite sure how that is meant to happen. Hamas has confirmed that none of its senior leaders were killed or injured in any way, although 5 lower-ranking members have been killed. So, it's clearly an attempt to derail the only peace process currently happening to try and negotiate some form of peace with the current genocide happening in Gaza and also the ongoing violations of humanitarian law and ethnic cleansing that is happening in the West Bank of Palestine. So, for Israel to claim that it was targeting Hamas and that it did the right thing is clearly not by anybody's standards acceptable. The United Nations has come out very strongly condemning it. So has the Gulf Cooperation Council. And as I said, world leaders from various countries, including within the Gulf states and including some within Western Europe, within Asia, etc. Most sane people see this for what it is, a breach of international law, a flagrant breach at that, and also an attack on the territorial sovereignty of Qatar. And if the world does not react in this way, Naledi, then it opens the door for Israel to do this to other countries as well.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the various responses from the international community, as you say, and this is reports that I'm seeing as well from international media. Antonio Guterres is saying that the air raids are flagrant violation. You've got the Qatari Ministry of Foreign Affairs quoted as saying that they condemn this in the strongest terms as a cowardly Israeli attack. Saudi Arabia having responded, condemning and denouncing the strongest terms the brutal Israeli aggression and flagrant violation of sovereignty in the sisterly state of Qatar. The response that you think we will see now, and I'm actually going to stack 2 questions, if you'll allow me, Ayesha, just to get as much done as possible. The response that you think we'll get from Qatar, perhaps even some of the other Middle Eastern countries, but Qatar specifically, considering its various relationships in the international community outside of just the Middle East, then the issue, of course, of what this does to negotiations, where negotiations on Gaza then move to as they've been sitting in Doha.
Absolutely. And as I said, it's the only remotely viable peace process that's been going on. And it's obviously an attempt to derail that peace process. But in terms of Qatar's response, I don't think Qatar will react militarily, although it could. I think, though, that other players in the region may react with some aggressive measures, particularly the Houthis in Yemen, possibly even the Iranians, possibly even the Lebanese. So we'll have to wait and see whether any of that comes to fruition. I don't think, as I said, we'll see a military response from Qatar. But what we are seeing is Israel really backing itself into a corner in terms of, gaining more and more opprobrium in global diplomatic circles for not just for its actions in Gaza, which are unconscionable and which constitute a Holocaust at this stage, but now also for its attack on a sovereign country, a country that was its ally from the mid-90s. Qatar was the second country to establish cautious trade ties with Israel in 1996. It was the second Gulf country to do so. And of course, this is going to derail those trade ties, any political and diplomatic ties. It's also going to severely strain the relationship not only between Qatar and Israel, but also between Qatar and the United States, which is obviously what the Trump administration is trying to mitigate in these official statements from the White House spokesperson, Catherine Leavitt.
Yeah.
But then, as I say, she kind of backtracks and says that Mr. Trump also sees this as an opportunity for peace or to accelerate the peace process for Gaza. And I really don't see how that is possible when you are deliberately targeting the very negotiators of that peace.
Yeah, I mean, it's a complex one, and we'll be watching it as the international community continues to react as well, Ayesha. But I did want to squeeze this one in as well. In Nepal, the Prime Minister stepping down amid protests that have just spiraled, right? Attempts to storm Parliament, social media blackouts, so much more. And we can talk about what you make around where this is going to go in Nepal. Just look at those visuals of young people on the streets, and we've got them running the Prime Minister's home also attacked in the midst of these protests. I wonder what we take as a lesson here at home and what you make of where this is going to go in Nepal.
Well, quite frankly, I see it as a warning to authoritarian regimes attempting to proscribe social media as a space for organizing protest, for spreading views that are perhaps not carried by mainstream media, etc. While neighboring countries such as India and Pakistan and China have been successful in getting the big social media platforms to kind of toe their government line, Nepal is a very small player in this respect.
Sure.
And so the social media networks such as Twitter, WhatsApp, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, etc., which were banned, had not complied with a 7-day deadline by the Nepalese government. And so, protesters, as you said, stormed parliament, then set part of it on fire. Much of this was carried out by so-called Gen Zers, Generation Z, young people, who make up a large percentage of the Nepalese population. And of course, the government in Nepal has now had to backtrack. Apart from the resignation of the prime minister, we've also seen a turnaround on this ban. The ban has been reversed because the government has realized that it could trigger serious, even more serious protest and more attempts to destabilize the current government. But what's interesting is that whereas when social media first surfaced, we saw it as a positive tool for change. Recent studies, Naledi, have shown that actually in authoritarian regimes, those regimes themselves have become very savvy in the last decade or so. We saw this when we saw what happened with the so-called Arab Spring. We thought, hey, this is a great tool, right? But now what studies are showing is that authoritarian regimes are actually using this tool themselves to promote propaganda, to surveil people, to basically censor people by intimidation
Right.
as well, and by the threat of repercussion.
Right.
So we are seeing some negative pushback as well.
Yeah, Ayesha, I wish we had more time, and we will keep inviting you back. Always a pleasure chatting to you, and thank you so much for giving us that wider lens on some of the other stories that are taking place on the globe, and we'll keep you updated on those as well. Ayesha Kajee is an international relations expert. We're back in a moment. Stay with us.